Imagine a universe where the most beautiful angel in creation never rebelled, where pride never poisoned the morning star's heart, and where the war in heaven simply never happened. Picture a reality where Lucifer still stands at God's right hand, leading the heavenly chorus in perfect harmony, while humanity grows up in a world that has never known the touch of evil. What would our world look like if Satan had never existed? Welcome to our channel, where we explore forbidden questions and hidden truths of history, religion, and the unknown. If you love journeys that challenge what you thought you knew, make sure to join us, because today's story may change the way you see everything. Let's step into the throne room of heaven, where the brightest star in all creation is about to make a choice that will reshape reality itself. Chapter 1. The Brightest Star. In the beginning, before time had meaning and before space had boundaries, there stood an angel whose beauty could blind the stars themselves. His name was Lucifer, the light-bearer, the morning star, the most magnificent being ever created by divine hands. Picture him standing before the crystal throne, his 6 wings shimmering with colors that have no names. Every feather caught light and threw it back tenfold, creating rainbows that danced across the golden streets of paradise. When Lucifer sang, the very foundations of heaven trembled with joy. His voice could make mountains bow and oceans weep with wonder. He wasn't just another angel in the heavenly host. No, Lucifer was the chief musician, the leader of worship, the one who directed billions of angelic voices in songs of praise that echoed through eternity. God had placed him above all other created beings, giving him wisdom that surpassed understanding and beauty that reflected divine glory itself. The other angels looked to him with admiration and respect. Michael the warrior, Gabriel the messenger, Raphael the healer, even these mighty archangels recognized Lucifer's supreme position. He walked in the very presence of God, closer than any other created being had ever been allowed to come. In those perfect days, Lucifer's heart burned with pure love for his Creator. Every song he sang, every note he played on his heavenly instruments, every breath he took was an act of worship. He understood his role perfectly, to reflect God's glory like a mirror reflects light, to lead all of creation in acknowledging the source of all goodness and beauty. But perfection, as we'll discover, can be a dangerous thing when free will enters the picture. Chapter 2. The Seeds of Pride. In the original timeline we know from Scripture, something terrible began to grow in Lucifer's heart, like a cancer eating away at gold. It started small, just a whisper of thought, a moment's pause before worship, a fleeting glance at his own reflection in heaven's crystal waters. The prophet Isaiah captured this cosmic tragedy in words that still send chills down believers' spines. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. What happened in those fateful moments? How does the most beautiful being in creation decide to wage war against the very source of his existence? The scriptures tell us that pride filled his heart. He looked at his own splendor and forgot where it came from. He saw his position above the other angels and decided he deserved to sit even higher. I will ascend to the heavens, he declared in his heart. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. These weren't just thoughts. They were declarations of war against the order of creation itself. And somehow, incredibly, Lucifer managed to convince a third of heaven's angels to join his rebellion. Millions upon millions of perfect beings, created to worship and serve, suddenly turned their backs on paradise itself. The war that followed shook the foundations of reality. Brother fought against brother, light clashed against light, until finally, Michael and his loyal angels cast the rebels out of heaven like lightning falling from the sky. In that moment, Lucifer became Satan, the adversary, the accuser, the serpent who would slither into Eden and poison the human race with the same pride that had destroyed him. But what if that moment of choice had gone differently? What if Lucifer had looked into his heart, seen the growing seeds of pride, and crushed them before they could take root? Chapter 3: The Choice Unmade. Let's rewind to that critical moment when pride first whispered its poison into Lucifer's ear. In our alternate timeline, everything hangs on a single decision, a heartbeat of choice that will reshape all of eternity. Lucifer stands before his reflection in heaven's crystal waters, and yes, he sees his own incredible beauty. Yes, he feels the weight of his position above all other created beings. The tempting thoughts rise in his mind, just as they did in the original timeline. Why should I serve when I could rule? Why should I worship when I could be worshipped? But then, and here's where our story diverges, something different happens. Perhaps it's a memory of God's kindness when he first spoke Lucifer into existence. Perhaps it's the sound of the other angels singing in pure joy, reminding him that true happiness comes from serving something greater than yourself. Or perhaps it's simply a moment of perfect clarity where Lucifer sees pride for what it truly is, a lie that destroys everything it touches. In that crucial instant, instead of nurturing the seeds of rebellion, Lucifer makes a choice that echoes through eternity. He falls on his face before the throne and cries out, "Father, I feel darkness trying to enter my heart. Please, cleanse me of this pride before it can take root." The response is immediate and overwhelming. God's love floods through Lucifer like cleansing fire, burning away every trace of selfish ambition. The other angels watch in wonder as their beloved leader emerges from this trial even more beautiful than before, his humility making his light shine brighter than ever. This single choice, this moment of choosing humility over pride, service over self, sends ripples through all of creation that will change absolutely everything. Free will has been tested in the highest places and has chosen love over rebellion. The cosmic order remains intact, but more than that, it's been proven and strengthened. But the consequences of this choice go far beyond heaven's throne room. They reach down into the very foundations of reality itself. Chapter 4: Heaven Without War. With Lucifer's choice to reject pride, the war that should have torn heaven apart simply never happens. There's no rebellion to crush, no angels to cast out, no creation of hell as a prison for the fallen. The perfect order of paradise continues unbroken, but this creates changes so profound they reshape the very nature of existence. Think about what this means for the heavenly realm itself. All the angels who would have followed Lucifer in rebellion, that third of heaven's host, remain loyal and pure. Billions of perfect beings continue their eternal song of worship without interruption. The harmony is so complete, so overwhelming, that it begins to affect the very fabric of reality. But here's where things get interesting. In the original timeline, the fall of Lucifer served a purpose in God's greater plan. It allowed for the full expression of free will, created the possibility of redemption, and set the stage for the ultimate demonstration of divine love through sacrifice. Without this cosmic rebellion, God's plan for creation must take an entirely different path. The relationship between heaven and earth changes fundamentally. Instead of a world that would need protection from evil influences, earth becomes a direct extension of paradise. There's no spiritual warfare because there's no enemy to fight. There's no need for guardian angels to battle demons because demons simply don't exist. This creates a universe where good exists without evil to define it, where love flows without hate to contrast it, where light shines without darkness to overcome. It sounds perfect, doesn't it? But as we'll discover, perfection itself brings unexpected challenges. The angels continue their eternal worship, but now they do so with the knowledge that they've been tested and have chosen well. Their service is no longer innocent obedience, it's conscious choice, proved through trial. This adds a depth to their worship that didn't exist before, a maturity born from having faced temptation and overcome it. But the biggest changes are yet to come, because this decision affects far more than just the heavenly realm. Chapter 5. Earth's Different Dawn. When God creates Adam and Eve in this alternate timeline, He places them in a Garden of Eden that's fundamentally different from the one we know. There's no serpent lurking among the trees, no tempter waiting to offer forbidden fruit, no possibility of a fall from grace that will bring death and suffering into the world. Picture Adam and Eve walking with God in the cool of the evening, just as Scripture describes. But now imagine that this perfect communion continues not for a brief time before the fall, but forever. They learn and grow in wisdom without ever experiencing shame, fear, or separation from their Creator. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil stands in the garden, but its purpose is completely different. Instead of representing a test that leads to humanity's downfall, it becomes a symbol of trust proved over time. Adam and Eve choose daily not to eat from it, not because they're forbidden, but because they understand that some knowledge comes only through relationship with God, not through independent discovery. As they have children and their descendants multiply across the earth, something beautiful happens. Each new generation is born into perfect innocence and remains there. There's no original sin to pass down, no corruption to inherit, no tendency toward evil to overcome. Humanity develops in ways we can barely imagine. Children grow up never knowing fear, never experiencing violence, never learning to lie or steal or hurt others. They explore the world with pure curiosity, invent and create without any desire to harm, and build relationships based on complete trust and openness. The very concept of deception is foreign to them because they've never encountered it. But this raises profound questions that will echo through our entire story. Can love truly exist without the possibility of betrayal? Is choice really free if there's no real temptation to overcome? Does goodness have any meaning if evil isn't even a possibility? As humanity spreads across this uncorrupted earth, we're about to discover just how different civilization can be when it develops without the influence of evil. Chapter 6. The Age of Innocence. In our world, human history is written in blood. Wars, conquests, betrayals, and violence mark every page of our story. But in this alternate timeline, humanity's expansion across the earth takes a completely different path. Picture the first cities built not for defense against enemies, but purely for the joy of community. Walls aren't constructed to keep invaders out. They're artistic expressions designed to beautify the landscape. Architecture develops not around fortification, but around harmony with the natural world. Technology advances along paths we've never imagined. Without the need for weapons, human ingenuity focuses entirely on creation, exploration, and improvement of life. The wheel isn't used to make war chariots. It's perfected for transportation that works in perfect harmony with the environment. Metallurgy develops not to forge swords, but to create tools that help gardens flourish and art to reach new heights. Medicine takes on a completely different character when there's no violence to heal from, no diseases born from corruption to cure. Instead, human knowledge of the body focuses on optimization, enhancement, and the pure joy of understanding how wonderfully people are made. Death from old age still eventually comes, but it's peaceful, natural, and viewed as a graduation to something even better. Art and music explode in directions our fallen world has never explored. Without pain to express, without conflict to resolve, creative spirits focus on capturing the pure beauty of existence. Songs celebrate the joy of being alive rather than lamenting loss and heartbreak. Paintings capture the wonder of a world where every sunset is perfect and every relationship is whole. Language itself develops differently. Words for deception, betrayal, hatred, and violence are never invented because the concepts they describe simply don't exist. Instead, vocabulary grows rich with terms for subtle variations of love, joy, creativity, and wonder. Poetry reaches heights impossible in our world because it's not constrained by the need to acknowledge darkness. But perhaps most remarkably, human relationships flourish in ways we can barely comprehend. Marriage is pure partnership without jealousy or betrayal. Friendships run deeper than oceans without fear of disappointment. Parents raise children without worry, and children grow without rebellion or resentment. It's beautiful beyond description, but it's also raising questions that will challenge everything we think we know about human nature. Chapter 7. Religions Never Born. In our world, religion largely exists to answer the question of evil. Why do bad things happen to good people? How can we find salvation from sin? Where do we turn when life becomes unbearable? But in a world where these problems never existed, spirituality takes radically different forms. Christianity as we know it simply cannot exist because its central premise, humanity's need for redemption from sin, is irrelevant. There's no fall to recover from, no sin to be forgiven, no death to overcome through resurrection. Jesus, if he comes at all, arrives not as a savior, but as a teacher and friend, showing humanity even deeper levels of communion with the divine. The concept of sacrifice for sin becomes meaningless because sin doesn't exist. Prayer transforms from pleading for help and forgiveness into pure celebration and communion. Worship services become festivals of joy rather than moments of repentance and renewal. Islam faces similar transformation. The very name means submission, but submission takes on new meaning when it's not about overcoming human rebellion against divine will. The concept of jihad, struggle against evil, becomes struggle toward ever greater good. The 5 pillars of faith become 5 celebrations of blessing rather than disciplines to overcome human weakness. Buddhism, built around the 4 noble truths of suffering, finds itself in a world where the first truth, that life is suffering, simply isn't true. The entire system must reinvent itself around different questions. How do we appreciate infinite blessing? How do we grow in perfection? How do we explore the depths of joy without becoming complacent? Hinduism's concepts of karma and reincarnation face new challenges when there are no bad actions to create negative karma and no cycle of suffering to escape through multiple lifetimes. The religion transforms into an exploration of how souls can experience infinite variations of bliss and creativity. Even atheism looks different, because the primary argument against God's existence, the problem of evil, no longer applies. Philosophical debates shift to questions of purpose in perfection and the meaning of existence when all needs are already met. But it's not just organized religion that changes. The entire human relationship with the divine takes new forms that our fallen world has never experienced. Chapter 8: The Philosophy of Perfect. Throughout human history, our greatest thinkers have wrestled with the problem of evil. Plato wondered about the shadows on the cave wall. Augustine struggled with how a good God could allow suffering. Modern philosophers like Camus declared life absurd because of its apparent meaninglessness in the face of death and pain. But in our alternate world, philosophy develops along completely different lines. The great questions that have driven human thought for millennia simply don't exist, replaced by entirely new puzzles that we can barely imagine. Ancient Greek philosophers, instead of asking, "Why do bad things happen?" find themselves exploring, "How can infinite good be fully experienced?" Plato's cave allegory transforms into something beautiful, a story about souls gradually awakening to ever greater levels of beauty and truth, not because they're escaping illusion, but because reality itself keeps revealing new depths of wonder. Aristotle's ethics, built around the concept of virtue as the mean between extremes, must be completely reconsidered in a world where there are no vices to avoid. Instead, ethics becomes the study of how to most fully embrace and express goodness. The question isn't how to be moral, but how to be maximally creative and loving. The medieval philosophers, who spent centuries trying to reconcile faith and reason, find their task transformed. Thomas Aquinas' arguments for God's existence face different challenges when everyone can directly experience divine goodness in creation. The problem becomes not proving God exists, but understanding how finite beings can relate to infinite perfection. Modern existentialists like Sartre, who declared that existence precedes essence and that humans are condemned to be free, discover that freedom in a perfect world looks completely different. Choice still exists, but it's choice between countless good options rather than the agonizing decisions between right and wrong that define our fallen world. The concept of meaning itself requires redefinition. In our world, meaning often comes through overcoming suffering, fighting injustice, or creating beauty from ashes. But what gives life meaning when there's no suffering to overcome, no injustice to fight, no ashes from which to create beauty? These philosophers develop entirely new branches of thought: the ethics of infinite blessing, the aesthetics of perfect beauty, and the existential philosophy of eternal joy. Chapter 9: Science Unbound. Scientific advancement in our fallen world has always been a double-edged sword. Every discovery that could heal has also carried potential for harm. Nuclear energy could power cities or destroy them. Genetic engineering could cure diseases or create biological weapons. Artificial intelligence could serve humanity or replace it. But in our alternate timeline, scientific progress faces no such moral dilemmas. When humans are incapable of evil intentions, every discovery becomes purely beneficial. the scientific method itself evolves differently because there's no need to consider the destructive applications of knowledge. Chemistry advances rapidly because there's no concern about creating poisons or explosives. Instead, chemists focus entirely on understanding the beautiful dance of atoms and molecules, creating compounds that enhance life, beauty, and understanding. The periodic table becomes a symphony of possibilities rather than a catalogue of potential weapons. Physics reaches incredible heights because researchers can pursue any line of inquiry without fear of creating destructive forces. Nuclear physics develops along paths focused purely on understanding the fundamental forces that hold reality together. Instead of creating bombs, scientists learn to harness these forces for creation, exploration, and the pure joy of discovery. Biology explodes with possibilities as researchers explore life without any fear of creating harmful organisms or unethical experiments. Genetic research focuses entirely on understanding the incredible complexity and beauty of living systems. There's no need for bioethics committees because unethical applications simply don't occur to anyone. Medicine transforms from a practice of fighting disease and injury to one of optimization and enhancement. Doctors become artists of human flourishing, helping people reach their full potential rather than merely treating ailments. Surgery develops not to repair damage from violence or disease, but to enhance natural capabilities and correct the gentle imperfections that still exist, even in paradise. Space exploration advances at incredible speed because all of humanity's scientific resources can focus on discovery rather than defense. Rockets designed for exploration rather than warfare reach other planets decades earlier. The search for life becomes a joyful expedition rather than a cautious probe into potentially hostile territory. But perhaps most remarkably, the relationship between science and faith becomes one of perfect harmony, as every discovery reveals new depths of divine creativity rather than challenging religious beliefs. Chapter 10: The Literature of Light. Every story ever told in our world draws its power from conflict. Heroes face villains, lovers overcome obstacles, characters struggle against fate, nature, or their own weaknesses. But in a world without evil, conflict, or internal struggle, storytelling must find entirely new sources of drama and meaning. The epic poems that define cultures in our world, the Iliad's tales of war, the Odyssey's journey through danger, Beowulf's battles with monsters, simply cannot exist. Instead, literature develops around themes we can barely imagine: the epic of discovery, the drama of creation, the adventure of deepening relationships. Homer, if he exists in this timeline, doesn't sing of Achilles' rage or Odysseus' long journey home from war. Instead, he might create epics about explorers discovering new continents filled with wonders, or artists collaborating to create beauty that pushes the boundaries of what's possible. The tension doesn't come from conflict, but from the excitement of possibility and the challenge of expressing infinite beauty through finite words. Shakespeare's tragedies cannot exist because there's no jealousy to drive Othello, no ambition to corrupt Macbeth, no family hatred to doom Romeo and Juliet. But perhaps his comedies evolve into something even more beautiful: celebrations of love that grows deeper through eternity, stories of misunderstandings that lead to greater intimacy rather than pain, tales of characters discovering new depths in themselves and others. The novel as an art form develops along completely different lines. Instead of character development through adversity, we see character development through joy, discovery, and ever-deepening relationships. Plot doesn't drive toward resolution of conflict, but toward revelation of new possibilities and deeper truths. Children's literature becomes pure wonder. Fairy tales don't feature wicked stepmothers or dangerous wolves, but magical creatures who lead children on adventures of discovery. The lessons taught aren't about overcoming evil or learning from mistakes, but about embracing wonder, celebrating differences, and exploring the infinite creativity of existence. Poetry reaches heights impossible in our world because it's freed from the need to acknowledge darkness while celebrating light. Poets explore the subtle gradations of joy, the infinite varieties of love, and the countless ways beauty can be expressed and experienced. But this transformation of literature raises profound questions about the role of story in human life and whether drama can exist without conflict. Chapter 11: The Gnostic Alternative. Hidden in ancient texts that the early church declared heretical, we find strange hints of alternate cosmic histories. The Gnostic Gospels, buried in Egyptian sands and forgotten for centuries, contain visions of realities where the cosmic order developed along different paths. The Gospel of Philip speaks of a world where the powers above and the powers below exist in perfect harmony. The Apocryphon of John describes multiple timelines where the cosmic rebellion takes different forms or doesn't happen at all. These texts were branded as dangerous heresies, but what if they preserved memories of possibilities that never came to pass? In the secret book of James, we find a fascinating passage where Jesus speaks of the world that could have been, where the morning star never dimmed. Early church fathers like Irenaeus fought fiercely against such ideas, calling them fantasies of deceitful spirits. But modern scholars wonder if these Gnostic writers were accessing something deeper, visions of alternate cosmic histories that challenge our understanding of destiny and free will. The Nag Hammadi Library, discovered in 1945, contains dozens of texts exploring themes that seem almost prophetic of our alternate timeline. The Gospel of Truth speaks of a reality where error never found a foothold, and the totality reached perfection without ever experiencing loss. The Tripartite Tractate describes cosmic orders where harmony was never broken. Most intriguingly, several Gnostic texts suggest that Lucifer's rebellion wasn't the original plan, but a deviation from something even more beautiful. The hypostasis of the archons hints at timelines where the light-bearer remained faithful and the cosmic order unfolded according to the first intention. These weren't just theological speculations. The Gnostics claimed direct revelation, mystical experiences that showed them alternate possibilities. They described meditation practices that could grant glimpses of the world behind the world, realities where cosmic history had unfolded differently. Church authorities suppressed these texts not just because they contradicted orthodox theology, but because they raised uncomfortable questions about the nature of destiny, the role of evil in God's plan, and whether the world we know is truly the best of all possible worlds. The Gnostic vision of cosmic alternatives challenges us to think beyond the familiar story of fall and redemption toward possibilities that stretch the imagination. Chapter 12: The Book of Enoch's Secrets. The Book of Enoch, excluded from most biblical canons but revered by early Christians and still considered scripture by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, contains the most detailed account of the heavenly rebellion found in any ancient text. But buried within its visions of cosmic warfare are hints of alternate timelines that never came to pass. Enoch describes being taken up to heaven and shown the secrets of the righteous, the secrets of the end of the world, and all the mysteries of the sons of men. But in the later chapters, he speaks of visions that seem to describe parallel realities, cosmic orders where the watchers never descended and the sons of God remained pure. The text describes in vivid detail how 200 angels, led by Semjaza and Azazel, descended to earth and corrupted humanity by teaching forbidden knowledge and taking human wives. Their offspring, the Nephilim, filled the earth with violence and ultimately brought about the flood. But Enoch also received visions of timelines where this rebellion never occurred. In one mysterious passage, Enoch writes, "And I saw another order of heaven, where the stars kept their course, and the watchers watched without falling. There the sons of God looked upon the daughters of men and blessed them from afar, and the earth was filled with wisdom rather than violence." The angel Uriel shows Enoch the books of the seasons and the years that contain not just the history that was, but the histories that could have been. These cosmic alternatives aren't presented as mere possibilities. They're described as real alternate dimensions where different choices led to different outcomes. Most fascinating is Enoch's account of meeting with Lucifer himself before the rebellion. The text suggests that the morning star wrestled with his decision, that he foresaw the consequences of his pride, and that for a moment he almost chose differently. Enoch writes, "I saw the light-bearer weeping before the throne, and his tears fell like stars." In that moment, all of creation held its breath, for the fate of worlds hung upon his choice. The Book of Enoch suggests that these alternate timelines aren't just theoretical, they exist somewhere in the vast complexity of God's creation, accessible through prophetic vision and mystical experience. Chapter 13: Islamic Perspectives on Iblis. In Islamic tradition, the story of Iblis, Satan, contains fascinating elements that differ from the Christian account and offer unique insights into our alternate timeline. The Quran tells us that when Allah created Adam, He commanded all the angels to bow down before this new creation. All obeyed except Iblis, who refused out of pride. "I am better than him," Iblis declared. "You created me from fire and created him from clay." This act of defiance led to his expulsion from paradise and his transformation into Shaitan, the great tempter of humanity. But Sufi mystics have long contemplated a profound question. What if Iblis had bowed? Their mystical poetry and philosophy explore timelines where pride never entered the heart of this powerful jinn, where the cosmic order remained intact, and where humanity developed without the influence of the great deceiver. The great Sufi poet Rumi wrote mysteriously about the world where the proud one learned humility, and the garden where the serpent never entered. His contemporary, Ibn Arabi, described mystical experiences where he glimpsed realities where the cosmic rebellion never occurred, and the divine plan unfolded without deviation. Islamic scholars have debated whether Iblis's rebellion was foreordained by Allah or whether it represented a genuine choice that could have gone differently. The Ash'ari school argued for divine predestination, but the Maturity school maintained that Iblis had real free will and could have chosen obedience. This theological debate opens fascinating possibilities. If Iblis truly had free will, then his choice to rebel wasn't inevitable. The alternate timeline we're exploring, where pride was rejected rather than embraced, becomes not just possible, but probable in an infinite multiverse of divine creativity. Sufi literature contains numerous references to meditation practices that can grant glimpses of the world that should have been. These mystics describe states of consciousness where they experience reality as it would have unfolded if the cosmic rebellion had never occurred. Worlds of perfect harmony between heaven and earth. The Islamic perspective adds crucial insights to our exploration because it emphasizes that even the rebellion of Iblis serves Allah's greater purpose, raising questions about whether our alternate timeline would truly be better or merely different. Chapter 14: Eastern Wisdom and Cosmic Balance. Hindu and Buddhist philosophy approaches our alternate timeline from radically different angles, raising profound questions about the nature of balance, growth, and enlightenment in a world without evil or suffering. In Hindu cosmology, the universe operates through the interplay of opposing forces: creation and destruction, Brahma and Shiva; preservation and change, Vishnu and time; order and chaos, Dharma and Adharma. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that even destructive forces serve the greater cosmic order. But what happens to this delicate balance when one side of the equation is removed? Ancient Hindu texts like the Puranas describe cycles of cosmic creation and destruction, but they also hint at alternate cosmic orders. The Brahma Purana speaks of kalpas that never knew the shadow, and yugas where Dharma never declined. These aren't just philosophical speculations. They're presented as real alternatives within the infinite creativity of Brahman. Buddhism faces even more fundamental challenges in our alternate world. The Four Noble Truths begin with the truth that life is dukkha, suffering or dissatisfaction. The entire Buddhist path toward enlightenment is built around overcoming this suffering through the Eightfold Path. But what happens to Buddhism when the first noble truth simply isn't true? Some Buddhist texts, particularly in the Mahayana tradition, suggest that there are pure lands, perfect worlds where beings can achieve enlightenment without experiencing suffering. The Buddha Amitabha is said to rule over such a realm, where spiritual progress comes through joy and wonder rather than through overcoming pain and limitation. The concept of karma, the law of cause and effect that governs moral action, requires complete redefinition in a world without evil actions. Instead of working to overcome negative karma from past misdeeds, beings in our alternate timeline would focus on generating ever greater positive karma through creativity, compassion, and spiritual growth. Zen Buddhism's emphasis on sudden enlightenment through direct experience might actually flourish in our alternate world. Without the mental obstacles created by suffering, attachment, and delusion, practitioners might achieve satori more easily and frequently. The famous Zen saying, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him," takes on new meaning when there's no violence or aggression to overcome. The Taoist concept of yin and yang presents perhaps the greatest challenge to our alternate timeline. This philosophy teaches that opposing forces are necessary for harmony and growth. Light needs darkness, good needs evil, activity needs rest. Taoists might argue that our perfect world would actually be less perfect because it lacks the dynamic tension necessary for true balance. Chapter 15: The Kabbalah's Hidden Dimensions. Jewish mystical tradition offers perhaps the most sophisticated framework for understanding alternate cosmic realities through the complex symbolic system of the Kabbalah. This ancient wisdom tradition maps out the structure of existence through the Tree of Life, 10 interconnected spheres, sephirot, that represent different aspects of divine manifestation. In traditional Kabbalistic teaching, our current reality reflects a cosmic breaking of the vessels, Shevirat HaKelim, that occurred during creation. This shattering scattered divine sparks throughout a flawed world, requiring the ongoing work of Tikkun Olam, repairing or healing the world to restore cosmic harmony. But Kabbalistic texts also describe alternate configurations of the Tree of Life that never experienced this breaking. The Zohar, the central text of Kabbalah, speaks mystically of the world of Atzilut that never fell, and the garden where the serpent never entered the tree. These aren't just metaphors, they're descriptions of real alternate spiritual dimensions. The great Kabbalist Isaac Luria developed detailed teachings about cosmic rectification that include visions of the world as it was meant to be. His students recorded mystical experiences where they glimpsed realities where the original divine plan unfolded without deviation, where the cosmic rebellion never occurred, and where humanity developed in perfect harmony with divine will. The concept of multiple universes, Olamot, is fundamental to Kabbalistic cosmology. These aren't just spiritual levels of reality, they include actual alternate timelines where different choices led to different outcomes. The mystics speak of gates between these worlds that can be opened through deep meditation and mystical practice. Most remarkably, Kabbalistic tradition suggests that working to repair our broken world actually brings these alternate realities closer to manifestation. The Talmud teaches that if all humanity could observe just one Sabbath perfectly, the Messiah would come immediately. This implies that our alternate timeline, the world without rebellion, might not be lost forever, but could actually be restored through spiritual effort. The Kabbalah's vision of cosmic alternatives provides a mystical framework for understanding how our exploration of what-if scenarios isn't just intellectual exercise, but actual glimpses into real possibilities that exist within the infinite complexity of divine creation. Chapter 16: Technology Without Evil. In our current world, artificial intelligence development is constrained by fears of misuse, surveillance, and the potential for AI to be turned against humanity. But in our alternate timeline, these concerns simply don't exist. When humans are incapable of evil intentions, AI development proceeds along entirely different paths. Picture artificial intelligence designed purely to enhance human creativity and understanding. Instead of being programmed with elaborate safeguards against misuse, AI systems are built to maximize benefit, beauty, and wonder. They become partners in exploration rather than tools that might be turned to harmful purposes. Machine learning algorithms develop not to manipulate human behavior for profit or control, but to better understand and serve human flourishing. Recommendation systems focus entirely on helping people discover new sources of joy, learning, and creative inspiration. Social media algorithms optimize for genuine connection and mutual understanding rather than engagement driven by outrage or conflict. Medical technology reaches heights impossible in our fallen world. Genetic engineering proceeds without ethical constraints, because there's no possibility of creating biological weapons or discriminating against those with genetic differences. Instead, genetic research focuses purely on optimizing human potential and eliminating the natural limitations that still exist even in paradise. Nanotechnology advances rapidly because there's no concern about creating destructive applications. Microscopic machines work to enhance human capabilities, repair environmental damage, and create new forms of beauty at the molecular level. The grey goo scenario that terrifies scientists in our world simply cannot occur when the technology is developed by beings incapable of destructive intent. Space exploration explodes with possibilities as all of humanity's technological resources focus on discovery rather than defense. Spacecraft are designed for exploration, colonization, and the pure joy of understanding the universe, rather than as potential weapons platforms. Contact with extraterrestrial life, when it comes, is approached with pure curiosity and welcome rather than fear and suspicion. Environmental technology achieves perfect harmony between human civilization and natural systems. Instead of struggling to repair damage from industrial pollution and overconsumption, engineers focus on creating systems that enhance rather than degrade the natural world. Cities become gardens, transportation becomes art, and manufacturing becomes a celebration of human creativity, working in partnership with natural processes. But this technological paradise raises profound questions about human purpose and the role of challenge in driving innovation and growth. Chapter 17: Politics of Paradise. Governance in our alternate world faces challenges we've never had to consider. When corruption is impossible, when leaders cannot be motivated by greed or power lust, and when citizens are incapable of hatred or violence, the entire purpose of political systems requires redefinition. Democracy as we know it largely exists to provide checks and balances against the abuse of power. But what happens when power cannot be abused? Elections in our alternate world aren't about choosing the lesser of evils or preventing tyranny. They're about selecting the most creative, wise, and inspiring leaders to guide communities toward ever greater flourishing. Political campaigns don't involve negative advertising, personal attacks, or fear-mongering because these concepts simply don't exist. Instead, candidates compete by demonstrating their vision for community enhancement, their track record of creative problem-solving, and they're to inspire others toward greater heights of achievement and joy. Economic systems face similar transformations. Capitalism as we know it depends on competition, scarcity, and the profit motive. But in a world where greed doesn't exist, and where abundance is achievable through perfect cooperation, economic theory must be completely reimagined. Markets exist not to create winners and losers, but to efficiently distribute resources and coordinate human creativity. Socialism faces different challenges when there's no class struggle to resolve, no oppression to overcome, and no inequality based on exploitation or discrimination. Instead of redistributing wealth from oppressors to the oppressed, economic systems focus on optimizing everyone's ability to contribute their unique gifts and receive what they need for maximum flourishing. International relations transform completely when warfare is impossible, and national interests cannot conflict in destructive ways. Diplomacy becomes a joyful process of coordinating global projects, sharing discoveries, and celebrating the unique contributions of different cultures and regions. Legal systems require total reconceptualization when there's no crime to prosecute, no contracts to breach, and no disputes that cannot be resolved through patient dialogue and mutual understanding. Courts become centers for creative problem-solving and community healing rather than venues for punishment and adversarial conflict. But perhaps most remarkably, the very concept of political opposition disappears when disagreement never becomes personal animosity and when all parties genuinely seek the common good through different approaches. Chapter 18: Faith in a Perfect World. Religious institutions in our alternate timeline face an unprecedented challenge. How do you organize faith communities when there's no sin to address, no suffering to comfort, and no salvation needed from a fall that never occurred? Churches cannot exist as we know them because their primary functions, confession, forgiveness, moral guidance in the face of temptation, and comfort in times of suffering, are irrelevant. Instead, these communities transform into centers of celebration, exploration, and ever-deepening communion with the divine. Worship services become festivals of joy and wonder, rather than gatherings for repentance and renewal. Sermons don't address moral failings or provide guidance for overcoming temptation. They explore the infinite depths of divine creativity and help congregations discover new ways to experience and express gratitude for existence itself. Prayer takes on completely different characteristics when there's no need to ask for forgiveness, protection from evil, or relief from suffering. Instead, prayer becomes pure communion, celebration, and collaborative exploration of how divine love can be more fully expressed through human creativity and relationship. Biblical interpretation faces fundamental challenges when core concepts like sin, redemption, sacrifice, and spiritual warfare are irrelevant to human experience. Scriptures must be understood through entirely different lenses, as poetry celebrating divine creativity, as wisdom for maximizing human flourishing, and as invitations to deeper communion with perfect love. Missionary work cannot exist as we know it, because there's no one to save from sin or convert from false beliefs. Instead, religious communities share their particular insights into divine beauty and learn from other traditions' unique perspectives on perfect existence. Theology itself requires complete reconstruction. Systematic theology in our world largely exists to explain the relationship between divine goodness and the existence of evil. But when evil doesn't exist, theologians must explore entirely different questions. How does finite creation relate to infinite perfection? What is the purpose of existence when all needs are already met? How do perfect beings continue to grow and develop? Religious education focuses not on moral formation or protection from temptation, but on cultivating wonder, developing creativity, and deepening the capacity for joy and communion. Sunday schools become laboratories for exploring the endless possibilities of existence in perfect relationship with divine love. Chapter 19: The Weight of Perfection. As we near the end of our journey through this alternate reality, we must confront the profound questions that this perfect world raises about the nature of love, choice, freedom, and what it truly means to be human. Can love truly exist without the possibility of betrayal? In our perfect world, every relationship is guaranteed to succeed. Every trust will never be broken. Every commitment will be honored forever. This sounds wonderful, but it raises troubling questions about the nature of genuine choice. If betrayal is impossible, is loyalty really meaningful? If abandonment cannot occur, does faithfulness have any value? Think about the most meaningful relationships in our fallen world. Often, they're made precious precisely because they've survived trials, overcome temptations, and chosen love despite the possibility of choosing something else. The couple who works through difficulties grows stronger. The friend who remains loyal during hardship proves the depth of their commitment. But in our alternate reality, these tests never come. Does genuine goodness require the possibility of evil? Philosophers have long debated whether virtue can exist without temptation to overcome. In our perfect world, humans are good not because they choose goodness over evil, but because evil simply isn't an option. Is this true moral goodness? or is it merely programming? Consider the problem of growth and development. In our world, humans develop character through facing challenges, overcoming obstacles, and learning from mistakes. We become stronger by lifting weights, wiser by making errors and correcting them, more compassionate by experiencing pain and healing from it. But what drives growth in a world where there are no challenges to overcome, no mistakes to learn from, and no pain to develop empathy through? The question of purpose becomes particularly acute in perfect circumstances. Much of what gives our lives meaning comes from our ability to make things better, to heal the sick, comfort the suffering, fight injustice, create beauty from brokenness. But in a world where there's nothing to heal, no one to comfort, no injustice to fight, and no brokenness from which to create, what gives existence its significance? Perhaps most troubling is the possibility that perfection itself might become a kind of prison. Without the possibility of loss, does possession have meaning? Without the potential for sadness, can joy be fully appreciated? Without darkness, does light truly shine? As we contemplate this perfect world we've imagined, we might find ourselves asking an uncomfortable question. Would we actually choose to live there? Chapter 20, The Lucifer Paradox. But here's where our story takes its most shocking turn, revealing a truth that changes everything we thought we understood about good, evil, and the nature of divine love itself. What if Lucifer's fall wasn't a cosmic accident or a failure in God's plan? What if the morning star's rebellion was the most necessary sacrifice in all of creation? What if our imperfect world, filled with pain and struggle and the constant choice between good and evil, is actually perfect by design? Consider this mind-bending possibility. A truly loving God would create beings with genuine free will, real choice, authentic love. But authentic love can only exist when not love is also possible. Real choice requires real alternatives. Genuine goodness only has meaning when evil is also an option. Perhaps Lucifer understood this cosmic necessity in ways we never imagined. Perhaps his rebellion wasn't selfish pride, but the ultimate act of selfless love, choosing to become the very possibility of evil so that all other created beings could choose authentic good. Maybe the morning star fell not despite God's plan, but because of it, making the ultimate sacrifice so that love could be real. In this stunning reframe, our fallen world becomes the only possible world where genuine relationship between creator and creation can exist. Every act of kindness becomes meaningful because cruelty was possible. Every choice for love becomes precious because hatred was an alternative. Every moment of faithfulness becomes valuable because betrayal could have been chosen instead. The paradise we've imagined, beautiful as it seems, might actually be a kind of spiritual death, where beings go through the motions of love without ever truly choosing it, where goodness exists without meaning, where perfection becomes the enemy of authentic relationship. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't why evil exists, but why love is so important to God that He was willing to allow the possibility of its opposite. Perhaps our struggle-filled world, where every day we must choose between light and darkness, is actually the most loving gift an infinite Creator could give to finite beings who long to love Him in return, not because they have to, but because they choose to. What if the question isn't, why didn't God prevent evil? But rather, why did God love us enough to make authentic love possible? What if Lucifer's fall was actually his greatest triumph? The moment when the morning star chose to make genuine love possible for all creation, even at the cost of his own eternal damnation. And what if that means our broken, beautiful, terrible, wonderful world is actually exactly what it was always meant to be? The only place in all of existence where love can be real, choice can be genuine, and relationship with the divine can be authentic rather than programmed. The next time you face a choice between good and evil, remember, you're participating in the most precious gift in all of creation, the ability to choose love freely. And perhaps, in some cosmic way, every time you choose the light, you're honoring the ultimate sacrifice of the one who fell so that your choice could matter. That's a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew about good, evil, and the true nature of divine love. Until next time, keep questioning, keep choosing, and keep discovering the shocking truths hidden in plain sight.